When Ethan got home, I was woefully unpacking the house of cakes and assorted decorations. Yesterday was our anniversary and his birthday. He said he wanted to bring his friends home to celebrate. For that reason, I went ahead and bought an assortment of gifts, took most of the day off, and worked all afternoon. However, I waited all night for the cake and the burnt-out candles, but I didn't get a single message from him. If I hadn't seen Sophie's friend circle, I probably wouldn't have known that he had changed his plans. Did you make the cake yourself? Ethan readily picked up the cake and threw it in the trash. Watching me nod in confirmation, he laughed out loud instead. No wonder it's so ugly. If it were before, I would have feigned irritation and thrown a tantrum with him. But now, I didn't want to say a word more. Seeing that I ignored him, Ethan carried out a bag, shook it, and gestured to me. I brought you your favorite Bubble Mart, or a set. It was our previously unspoken way of making up, buying me my favorite things once he felt like pissing me off. Bubble Mart, though, is only Sophie's favorite. I've seen her share the series sets on Twitter. I still proceeded to keep my hands moving, not as giddy as Ethan thought I would be to catch the gift. Ethan didn't see a response from me as he set the box down himself and walked himself into the kitchen. I'll fry you an egg then, and make you a dish on the side. Ethan's cooking skills are very good, because when we first got married I was very picky with my mouth. He had specially learned to cook from a chef. Ethan had just cracked the eggs into the pot when he received a phone call. After hanging up, he hurried into the bedroom. I smelled a burning paste in the living room and walked into the kitchen only to find his cell phone still sitting on the counter. I had just served the omelette when I saw a new message pop up on my cell phone. The message was from Troubled Little Assistant. Did you find the clothes I want, Ethan? I was just about to turn my phone off by opting out of sight, when I was caught off guard by Ethan's shove just as my hand reached out. The plate in my hand was unsteady, and the omelette that had just come out of the pan fell all over my hand in one fell swoop. He snatched the phone and put it in his pocket, looking at me with an angry face. Can you have some sense of boundaries? Do you have to read messages from work too? After scolding me, he first took out his cell phone and replied to the message before he raised his head to look at me squarely. When he saw the blisters on my hands, he frowned and said, "Why are you so fussy? Can't even serve a plate well? Forget it, I'll take you to the hospital." This sentence was said as if it was a handout. I laughed sarcastically in my heart. Backwards he is also is really good at it. If Ethan hadn't pushed me, I wouldn't be suffering from this. However, my body is important and the burns are large, so I didn't want to argue with him, so I followed him out the door. I froze when I opened the car door. It had been a long time since I had traveled with him, a long time since I had been in this car. But this car, it was one of our wedding gifts. The passenger side of this car was now covered in pink fur cushions, and the front was filled with Bubble Mart ornaments. Even the backrest has a Trouble Ghost special seat attached to it. Ethan saw me frozen beside it and yanked me away. I often go out with her on errands. She's haunted and loves to get these things, so I just go along with her. You're not going to get upset over something so trivial, are you? I snapped back, opening the backseat door directly and getting in. Seeing Ethan still outside the car, I calmly urged him, "It's okay, just hurry up and drive." Ethan got in the car with a strange look on his face, and as he started the car, he finally couldn't resist asking me, "Aren't you going to get rid of it?" I ignored his question. Why should I get rid of it? Oh yes, if it were before, I would have gone crazy and thrown it all away and would have hysterically questioned why he should hire someone with no sense of boundaries. What did Ethan say at the time? That Sophie was good at her job, unlike you. But what's to care now? I don't even care about Ethan. I'll care about this kind of behavior like a dog peeing on the floor pan style. Halfway through the drive, it suddenly started raining heavily. Ethan frowned and picked up his cell phone, but somehow put it back down. Just as the car was approaching the hospital, a call suddenly came in. The caller was Sophie. On the other end of the phone, Sophie's voice with a crying tone was amplified in the small car, and transmitted into my ears without missing a single beat. "Ethan, it's thundering all of a sudden, I'm so scared, and the power's out at home, can you come over and help me look?" Ethan didn't even look at me, he anxiously changed direction and rushed towards Sophie's house. While driving, he also coaxed the other party in a low voice. After hanging up the phone, Ethan then acted like he remembered me. His tone changed and added a bit of euphemism. "Sophie is a bit claustrophobic and afraid of the dark, I have to go over there first," he said while looking at me with a tense look on his face, as if he was waiting for my approval. I spread my hands and told him flatly, "You can go, it's your freedom, can you put me down at the intersection? You guys are in the thick of it, so don't take me as a light bulb." Ethan blushed as he gritted his teeth and didn't agree. "I'll just go over and see what's going on at her house, and I'll be down soon to take you to the hospital." I said nothing in response. Soon after we arrived at Sophie's house, Ethan flipped out the extra candy that had somehow appeared on the passenger seat and told me perfunctorily, "I'm just going to go up there to see what's going on, I'll be down soon." Most of the hour passed silently, but Ethan was slow to come down. My hand was hurting too much to bear, but it was a good thing he hadn't locked the car. I got right out of the car and took a cab and headed to the hospital. By the time I finished treating my wound and got home, Ethan was busy cooking. When he saw me coming home, he shot me a displeased look. "Why didn't you ask me to pick you up?" Indeed, he had sent me a message about half an hour ago. For 7 years of marriage, I had always returned his messages in seconds. I indifferently pulled a random excuse. My cell phone was dead and turned off. I didn't see it. Ethan was busy putting the finished meal into a thermos box. He glanced at me, pursed his lips, picked up a gift bag from the coffee table in the living room and handed it to me. "I remembered that you like this brand of perfume, so I bought you a bottle." I looked up, just in time to meet his gaze that was like a great mercy. I didn't take it. I turned around and walked over to the couch and sat down, calmly saying, "I stopped liking this brand a long time ago. Give it to someone you like." Long before I came back, I swiped Sophie's new tweet, "It's raining emo, gotta shop to be in a good mood." The accompanying picture shows her trying on a bracelet, with a hand carrying a bag in the corner of the picture. On her wrist is a souvenir gift I gave her last year. Seeing me swipe my phone with a disinterested look on my face, Ethan approached with a displeased look on his face, trying to check my injury. I was so startled that I bumped into the perfume on the table. "Ethan thought I was having a tantrum," he sneered and said. "How grown up are you to be having a tantrum? Sophie is just a sister to me, why are you getting angry with a girl?" Ethan said to me sarcastically as if he had thought of something. He said he hates female competitors. "But you are as jealous as a little girl every day, you don't look at what age you are." I was really annoyed, put down my cell phone, shrugged my shoulders, and calmly explained to Ethan, "I'm not angry, it's your business if you're nice to her, it's not my turn to say anything." Indeed, the hardened body grows on him. Will he not do it just because I say I don't like it? Ethan listened to my words, as if he was exasperated, and laughed. "What is this if you are not jealous? You weren't like this before? How did you become this kind of person?" Ethan straightened up and looked at me with disgust. "I have to go out first, I won't be back for the next few days, you can talk to me when you know better." After saying that, Ethan carried the thermos box and left the door without looking back. I didn't care about him either, I was just happy to be alone. I finished the game beautifully and soaked in the bath, and slept as well as I have slept in a long time. The next day, I went to work refreshed, just in time for our group to take a big order. My leader Grace came over and patted me on the shoulder, smiled and said to me, "I haven't seen you so energetic in a long time, is there something joyful going on?" I smiled back and nodded, "Yes, I've been preparing for a divorce recently." Grace was surprised, looked at me with a gossipy face. "This is indeed a good thing, how to think of divorce?" A bitter smile appeared on my face. "It's just those emotional things. But it's all in the past." I changed my tone and asked, "Grace, do you know any lawyers in this field? Help me recommend one." Grace gave me a hug and pulled out 2 cupcakes from her desk and handed them to me. "Of course I do. You have to come to the department party tonight." I smiled and agreed. Our department usually has a party when we get a big order, but my heart was so focused on Ethan that I hadn't been there for a long time. It was a good time to get in touch with some new life. In the evening, I arrived on time at the location Grace had sent me. It wasn't long before I walked in and ended up with an unexpected guest. Ethan looked at me with a pleased expression. "How did you know I was here?" Before I could open my mouth to explain, he pulled me along forcefully. "It just so happens that a group of friends haven't seen you for a long time, come and join us." I said it was a gathering of friends, but as soon as I pushed open the door of the private room, I was greeted by Sophie, who appeared amidst the fireworks. Sophie's sweetly smiling face sank the moment she saw me, but she quickly changed her attitude, smilingly came over to take my arm. "Sister-in-law also came? It just so happens that we're having a party today, celebrating that I took down a good project." I directly wrenched my arm away from her. Sophie instantly aggravated. "Is sister-in-law not used to people holding her arm?" "Sorry, sister-in-law." My brain ached from the sound of the people in this box and the music. I wasn't used to her, and I directly disliked her. "Yes, I'm not used to it, especially you. As soon as you touched me it felt like my whole body emitted a tea odor." I scanned her up and down. Decades of tea cakes can be sold at a good price, decades of stupidity even wrapped in a layer of tea flavor is worthless. My words have just fallen, Sophie tears have reached her eyes, she also has a look of strength to make efforts to hold back the tears not to fall. Ethan could not stand to see it first, he protected Sophie behind him and looked at me with a disgusted face. "You're not considerate at all on this kind of occasion, I see that you haven't learned to be understanding at all in the past few days. Why are you always targeting Sophie, did they annoy you?" I laughed. What is the reason that he doesn't know himself? Next to those friends see the situation is not right, hurry up to persuade. One by one, they all ran up to toast. Sophie is still behind Ethan's silent tears, while Ethan is boldly helping Sophie block the wine. A group of people are all looking over at me again. Ethan saw that the wine in my glass didn't move at all, and coldly questioned me. "Sophie has even given you a drink to make amends, what are you still dissatisfied with?" Seeing Ethan backing her up, Sophie also put away her tears and with some pretense of naive doubt, "Yeah, sis, it's not like Ethan and I have anything." Right, sis, just be generous and drink up." The others all chimed in when they saw this. I snorted coldly and splashed the wine directly at Ethan and Sophie. I then slammed my glass down hard on the floor. The whole box fell silent. I said sarcastically, "They're all cuckolds, and I have to distinguish between dark and light green?" After saying this, I didn't care what the reaction of the people behind me was, and directly turned my head and left the box. I just walked out not 2 steps, Ethan chased after me. He eagerly pulled my hand, looking at me with a helpless and serious face. I said, "I have nothing to do with Sophie, why don't you believe me?" He turned his words and said to me with a look of hatred, "You disappoint me too much, you don't have any tolerance for people, and you keep interfering with my work, can't you sympathize with me?" I pulled my hand out of his with force and slapped him hard. Sophie, who followed Ethan out, ouched and rushed forward to hold Ethan. I laughed out loud instead as I watched him look at me with an incredulous face. "You, and you." I pointed at the 2 of them. "I wish you guys happiness, okay?" I looked at them with a disgusted face. "Do you have a little pussy in your heart for what you've done, okay? You're such an adult that you don't even know the word shame. Also, I thought there was no recipe for longevity." I said sarcastically to Ethan, "How come there are still people living from the Qing dynasty to the present?" As soon as the words left his mouth, Ethan's face was as wonderful as a color palette. I didn't bother to get into it with them anymore and just turned around and walked away. Ethan threatened me unwillingly from behind, "Clara. You've really gone too far this time, no way, let's get a divorce." It was only then that I began to look him squarely in the eye and smiled weakly back at him. "Sure, I'll come out with divorce papers in a couple days, remember to sign them then." "Divorce," I begged. As I turned around, I didn't miss his certainty after his consternation, or Sophie's secret amusement. Ethan's dismay that I would even talk about divorce, and certainty because he subconsciously assumed there was no way I would leave him. It's true that in 7 years of marriage, every time we've had a fight, even a row, I've begged him for peace within 3 days. And the last time he filed for divorce with me, I was spineless and got down on my knees to beg for a little bit of his begging. Nowadays I just feel bored. In fact, the moment I actually said separate, it was instead like a boulder had fallen in my heart that had been hanging in the air for so long. For so many years, I had felt multiple emotions over the goodbyes in my previews. But when the words came out, I realized it turned out to be just as easy as saying what I was going to eat tonight. It's just that in certain moments I seem to feel true happiness, so I keep clinging to Ethan. But those moments of happiness, when I think about it, seem like they were just a gift from him. Those moments of happiness have too many pieces that don't belong to us. It's like eating a full omelette full of broken shells. This marriage was rotten from the moment I stepped into it. I walked away with an unconscious bitterness in my heart. I'm allergic to alcohol, but he felt that not drinking at the bridal party was not giving face to his friends, and for that reason did not take me to a friend's party for a long time. He said, "Isn't it just a glass of wine? Why do you have to die? It's so pretentious." It turned out that he can also be like a fish out of water for others to block drinks. After seeing the truth, my heart suddenly cleared up. Back to the department party box. Although it has been a long time since I attended the party, but the atmosphere is still very good. In the meantime, Ethan kept sending me messages. "I just had a bad attitude, when are you coming home?" Ethan sent a message. "I'll wait for you next door." Ethan continued to send messages. "Why don't you answer the messages?" Ethan asked anxiously. "I can't understand why you won't even drink a glass of wine. Don't you love to engage in female competition and charming men? You don't want to show your face even if you're given the chance to do so?" Ethan questions. "Go home." Ethan urges. "I'll make you some soup." Ethan sends concerned messages. From the second message on, I just turned on the undisturbed. Before I was looking forward to receiving his messages, now it just felt like someone was always spewing shit in my phone. We played late and since I was on vacation the next morning, I went straight to the hotel and got a room to sleep. I turned on my phone, which had been on silent, just after noon the next day when I arrived downstairs at work, and realized that in addition to countless messages, there were calls from Ethan at different times. I ignored the other messages, and only replied to the "then we divorce" one alone. Just after replying, Ethan's call came in immediately. As soon as I got on the phone, I was aggressively questioned, "Why don't you answer my messages? Where did you go without coming home?" I felt he was being unreasonable and impatiently replied, "I'm busy at work, big brother." Ethan's gritted voice came from behind, "Are you sure?" I turned around only to see Ethan standing behind me with a tired face. Ethan looked like he had been up all night and was going crazy. "What the hell did you do yesterday? I waited for you all night." In public, I couldn't help but feel a bit disgusted. We're all adults, we have our own things to do, it's not like I'm begging you to wait for me. And it's not like you're anyone's business, what do you care? Ethan probably never thought in his life that there would be a backlash to the words he uttered. In public, I couldn't help but feel a bit disgusted. We're all adults, we have our own things to do. He said he was going to pull me away. I slapped him hard and looked at him with disgust. Can't you understand what I'm saying to you? I have to go to work, you're the one who's being unreasonable. I slapped the hand that had slapped him as if I was afraid of any unclean residue. A sting flashed through Ethan's eyes and he was about to say something when the phone rang again. After he answered the phone, he said to me with an apologetic face, "Wife, Sophie is locked inside by the elevator, only I have an elevator card, I'll go over first." Another special case. I have to send him to the hospital when I'm in pain from my period. I'm afraid of the dark when there's a thunderstorm or a power outage. I have to wear other people's clothes when I'm cold. I have to go to dinner with other people when I'm tired, and I have to make friends with other people's friends. I was worried that there was no way to send him away, really want to doze off and send a pillow. I waved my hand indifferently, "Go on." He had just taken 2 steps, but as if he had made a major decision, he turned back to me and said, "I don't agree with the divorce." I replied perfunctorily, "Then let's meet for dinner in a couple of days and talk about it." Ethan, however, as if he had gotten a promise not to divorce, left with peace of mind. Ethan never returned and never went home. I was happy that no one was messing with me. 2 days later, I wanted to ask him out to talk about the divorce, a long time to take the initiative to send him a message. "See you at Morning Glory this afternoon? Have a chat." His side quickly came back to the message, "Figured it out? I'm still traveling, see you tomorrow? Chat divorce." That side suddenly went silent, after a long time before replying. "This side is still a bit of a matter, a few days. You think through and then tell me." I replied in a bad mood, "After a few days can, not I will sue you." Ethan quickly sent a voice, annoyed, "You have to make it so desperate, Clara." I calmly typed a reply, I said divorce is divorce. Ethan suddenly softened his attitude. "Clara, we said before, we have to solve the problem, to be together for life." Without reading this message I exited the dialog box impatiently. Yes, that's what I said when I was in love, but did I create the problems? To be together, this promise is I broke? This time to take the oath of love to kidnap me? Crossing out the WeChat page, Weibo pushes Sophie's new content to me as if it were humane. Shushushushushu. The accompanying picture is a photo of her at different hit points in Suzhou, and the same is more or less evident of another person's presence. Suzhou, the place Ethan and I agreed to visit when we got married. It's not that I haven't had the chance to go there in the past 7 years, but every time I wanted to go to Suzhou, Ethan would ask me, "Who the hell is in Suzhou? Why do you want to go to Suzhou?" Whenever he wanted to go to Suzhou, Ethan would ask me, "Why do you want to go to Suzhou?" Every time, he would look at me in a preachy manner, "What's the point of running away every day when you're married? Why don't you just stay home and wait for me to come home?" So I waited and waited and waited for 7 years, and when I was dead set on it, all I got was the news that he had gone to Suzhou with someone else. Ironic. After 2 days of waiting, I couldn't wait any longer and sent him a divorce decree. Ethan did not reply. I do not care about him, began to start the divorce proceedings. That afternoon, someone sent 999 roses to the company. I knew whose handiwork it was when I saw it. I paid the cleaning lady to take care of it. I called the phone and when I got through, I heard Ethan's voice with delight. "Did you see the flowers I sent you? I remembered that you liked flowers the most before." I was silent for a moment and spoke bluntly, "That's what I liked before, Ethan, what I liked before I don't like now." I frowned, remembering the big bouquet of flowers that had just been brought in with a bang, and it only bothered me. "How grown up are you? Messing around so childishly is only going to make things difficult for me." Ethan fell silent, his just exultant tone gone. After a few seconds, he spoke, "I'll see you at Morning Glory this afternoon?" "Sure." I quickly agreed. I arrived at the place early in the afternoon with the divorce papers, but I didn't expect Ethan to arrive even earlier. He was accompanied by Sophie. I didn't say much, I just took out the divorce papers and put them on the table. Ethan looked like he was ignoring it and just handed over the menu. "You're here, don't you want to eat first?" "No," I declined, "I didn't come here to eat with you." Ethan's face stiffened, and he eagerly explained to me, "Sophie and I, we have a purely superior/subordinate relationship, there's nothing going on between us." He pushed Sophie, who spoke up in aggravation, "Ethan and I only talked about work, we didn't say anything." I looked at them in disbelief and almost laughed in exasperation. "You guys don't." I raised my hand to stop them from speaking, "Don't make me look like I'm beating up lovebirds, I truly wish you guys well. I don't care what your relationship is, I just want a peaceful divorce, is that okay?" I was very sincere in my words. Ethan, however, looked at me as if he was surprised, and looked at me with a look like he was playing house. "Clara, stop it, I don't want to divorce you." I felt a kind of powerlessness of not being able to communicate with human beings. I also told him very seriously, "I don't want to fool around, since you don't want to get a peaceful divorce, then wait for the lawsuit." After I said that, I didn't want to stay any longer and directly got up with the intention of leaving. Ethan took my hand and forcefully tried to pull me to sit down. I struggled to get away, but at that moment, an acquaintance walked in the doorway, and I hurriedly called out to him, Adrian. Adrian is my friend from college. He confessed his love to me in college, but I was so focused on Ethan that I rejected him and gradually broke off contact with him. I wonder if he'd be willing to help me out. Adrian looked over in the direction of the voice and hurried over to my side. As soon as I took Adrian's hand, I was about to leave. Sophie followed suit and was about to take Ethan's hand, but Ethan pushed it away. Ethan was dead set on Adrian and I. He also knew that I had been pursued by Adrian back in college. Clara, that's not true, you do love me, right? I didn't want to leave him with unnecessary thoughts and told him bluntly, Ethan, I can say very clearly that I don't like you anymore, and whoever I like now, it's not you anyway. I scanned him up and down and raised the corners of my mouth, looking at him sarcastically. You have no tolerance for people at all. The sight of you just makes me sick. With that said, I took Adrian on my arm and headed out the door. As for how long Ethan froze there with his gray head, that's not my business either. Just as I left the hotel entrance, I apologized to Adrian in embarrassment. I'm sorry, I temporarily used you as a gun. Adrian is still the same look before, warmly smiled at me. It's okay, sounds like you guys are getting divorced? I also do not hide, directly nodded to respond to this matter. Adrian's eyes seemed to brighten up for a moment. He smiled and comforted me. It's okay, the old doesn't go and the new doesn't come. I smiled at him gratefully. I'll take your word for it then, I'll buy you dinner next time. I looked at the time and apologized to Adrian. I have to get back to work. If you need anything, message me. I'll give you a ride? Adrian asked me. I politely declined the offer. It's okay, it's just around the corner. After I went back to the office and finished my work, I immediately went home to pack my bags and moved back to my house without stopping. But every night, I saw a familiar car parked downstairs. I was indifferent to this. He could park it if he wanted to, what did it have to do with me? A month later, on a rainy evening, I suddenly received the sad news that my beloved sister-in-law had passed away. I rushed back to my hometown overnight. The next day it was raining and the family was at the wake when an unexpected guest came. Ethan came in. It was my uncle who let him in, but it was true that I hadn't had time to tell them about my filing for divorce. Before he could say anything, I unceremoniously threw him out, then gave my relatives a stern warning. Said that if anyone let him in, then I would never come back to this house again. Anyway, my mom and dad are gone, and I don't have any great attachment to this home. Speaking of which, I just added one more point to my hatred for Ethan. I was cooking dinner when the news of my parents' death in a car accident was sent to my cell phone. At the time, I had gotten into a huge fight with him over Sophie and he deleted my messages. When I got the message from home again and rushed back, my parents had already been buried. I came back to question Ethan, but all I got was his justified reply. You don't know any better, how can you remember the lesson if you're not allowed to suffer a little? How grown up are you still here with a fake number? Isn't it just a parting of life and death? Is it a disgrace? At that time, his justifiable tone of, I am doing you a favor, was deeply engraved in my heart. It rained for 3 days and 3 nights. Ethan stayed outside in the rain during the day waiting for me, and slept in the car at night. It was not until the 3rd day that someone hurriedly told me, Yao, your ex-husband has fainted. When I arrived at the clinic, Ethan had just woken up. When I arrived at the clinic, Ethan was just waking up. When he saw that I was finally willing to see him, he looked at me eagerly. Please, Clara. He struggled to get up as the needle was touched and began to bleed. His bleeding hand gripped the corner of my shirt. We're not divorcing, I don't want to divorce you. He looked at me with a sincere look on his face, as if he was about to shed a tear the next second. I know it's wrong, Clara, I've sacked Sophie. Don't want a divorce, okay? Sophie was dismissed, I have long known. She left the company, also attempted labor arbitration, but was Ethan directly stabbed through her multiple loopholes in the work. Before I went to Suzhou, I just remembered that you wanted to go to Suzhou before, and I wanted to go and do some preparations in advance. Originally did not want to bring Sophie, when you said you wanted to divorce. I was a little angry. Ethan, as if he remembered something again, a face eager to explain to me. In the face of his word-crying bitterness, I just took half a step back with a disgusted face, extricating my clothesline and patting the non-existent dust on it. I wouldn't make up with you even if I didn't have Sophie. I looked straight at him. For me, there would be Sophie Wong, Sophie Chan, Sophie without Sophie. You're dirty and disgusting. Do you understand? I gave him my final verdict, word for word, then gave him a sarcastic smile. Ethan, it's not like we're parting ways. Why are we so embarrassed? It's just a divorce. Looking at my unforgiving back, Ethan begged bitterly, can you give me a reason? I'll promise to divorce you after I say it. I turned around and looked at him. In this instant, bits and pieces of what had gone before began to come flooding back to me. All those times I had cried through the night in pain and helplessness were now calming down. I looked at him and calmly told him what I had been holding in my heart. You know, Ethan, I've always felt like I was a bit of a failure. I thought you were incapable of loving people, so I patiently taught you. Teach you how to take good care of your partner when she's on her period. Teach you how to find the joy of love in ordinary, trivial life. Teach you how to walk steadfastly through our long 7-year journey. To teach you how to accept love and respond to it. But you always seem to be unwilling to listen to me, always messing things up, but always sure that I won't leave you. You're always so confident, always stomping on my love, as if that's what makes you look good. Until now, I didn't realize it's not that you don't know how to love, you just don't like me. You will prepare warm brown sugar water for her when she has menstrual cramps, and tell her not to come to work and rest at home. You'll send her messages in the wee hours of the morning and listen to her complain about the boring things in her life. You'd hold back the drinks for her, but forget that I'm allergic to alcohol, and just think I'm not giving face. We agreed to go to Suzhou for 7 years, and on the eve of the imminent breakup of our marriage, you took her with you on a business trip, and made a special stay after work to accompany her to hit the scenery of the water towns in the south of the Yangtze River. You told me you were making a plan for Suzhou and wanted to take me to make up for this trip. But what kind of strategy is there that you two have to go alone to accomplish? You say you love me. What about her? Is it really friendship again? I don't think it's such a failure now. For me, even if I've been on this path of failure for 7 years, I've stopped in time. After saying this, the last of my baggage was completely thrown off. I stared at him coldly. I came here today because I don't want you to die here, otherwise it will be ugly. I've already filed for divorce, just wait. After saying these last words, I turned around and walked away without a care in the world. After hearing my words, Ethan froze for a long time. Finally, after the injection was finished, he quietly went back. One late night about a couple months later, I suddenly received a call from our mutual friend. Sister-in-law, Ethan has been drinking too much, so much so that it feels like his stomach is about to be perforated. He's been thinking about you. Can you come over? On the other end of the line were noisy voices. The caller's voice was anxious, and Ethan's voice was vaguely chanting my name. I just found this childish trick boring and funny. I paused for a few seconds and spoke. Don't you guys take care of him all the time, it will be taken care of. With that I hung up the phone. I had a good night's sleep with no more worries to bother me. I had a good night's sleep. I had a smooth life for half a year, and in the middle of it, he never came to bother me again. But at the end of September, one late night, I received a strange phone call. Hello, is this Miss Clara? Uh-huh. I was still amazed at what the other party was up to when they came right out with the reason for their visit. We are the First People's Hospital of the city. Your family member Ethan was involved in a car accident and is being resuscitated. There is a risk of critical illness. Can you come over to take a look? Listening to these words, my thoughts drifted back to earlier when I had an appendicitis attack. At that time, I was in unbearable pain, but Ethan ignored my pain and thought I was making a big deal out of it. Isn't it just an appendicitis stomachache? It's not like I'm going to die. Why are you being so melodramatic? I'm busy, can't you see that? I struggled to get up and called 120 before I was taken to the hospital. Hello, how are you? I then came back to my senses and said with a smile, I am sorry, you have the wrong number. A year later, I finally got a divorce decree from the court, and I became the leader of a solo group. It just so happened that our group won another big project, and in my joy, I announced that I would take everyone with me to Suzhou for a week's vacation. Everyone cheered with joy. Ethan, who was sitting next to me in his wheelchair, looked up at this moment and was about to say something, but then hung his head again. But who cares? The place I dreamed of going to when I was 17 finally arrived after 10 years on the road. It was just in time for the rainy season. I pushed open the window and took a deep breath of the rain that was wet with a hint of coolness. I put my hand out to catch the rain that belongs to Suzhou. It was like going back to the summer when I was 17 years old. Through the misty rain, I saw the young man holding an umbrella to feed the cat.